Thank you so much for listening and giving me the opportunity to do this. I really appreciate that. I'm Alexia McKnight, and I'm a mother of two in the district. And I'm also a veterinary radiologist. And as a profession, we are surrounded by modern technology, just like everybody else. I was an avid lover of technology. Then I had this very interesting and unexpected twist that drastically changed my life. And I'm here to share my professional and personal experience and ideally offer some valuable insight to your health and that of our kids. This was a typical day in my life, staring at computer monitors all day, surrounded by various and sundry wireless devices, like a smartwatch, a personal cell phone, a work cell phone, an iPad, a wireless laptop, wireless keyboard, wireless mouse, and there are cables around my feet. This was all day, every day. Now, as radiologists, we also have typically greater expertise than most in the biological effects of radiation. We measure, we monitor, we use it wisely because we know in excess, it can be very dangerous. But all of our diagnostics and therapy, or most of it, is in this ionizing radiation, that far right side of the electromagnetic spectrum. Energy are waves that have enough energy to knock an electron out of an orbit of your body, creating an unstable ion. This lecture is not about that. It's all about non-ionizing radiation, lower energy waves that don't have enough energy to knock an electron out of an orbit, nor does it have enough energy to create heating. It always used to be thought that if this lower energy spectrum wasn't strong enough to cause heating, like it does in a microwave oven, then it can't possibly have any biological effect. The question is this still true? This lecture is going to be mostly about this end of the non-ionizing radiation spectrum, radio frequency and microwave energy. The other half is equally as important, some claim even more, often being exposed to electric fields, magnetic fields, and conductive emissions. Some of these lower frequencies, like conductive emissions, are also emitted from the power supplies of the wireless technology themselves. So the exposure can include multiple different frequencies. But is 24/7 exposure from all of our wireless devices and towers and laptops, Bluetooth routers, is it really a hazard, or is it all tinfoil hat craziness? So let's explore. Out of curiosity, what does Wikipedia say? Right here it says it's widely accepted that low frequency fields that are too weak to cause significant heating cannot possibly have any biological effect. And that mimics our commonly held belief. Then it goes on to say, despite this commonly accepted result, some research has been conducted to show that these weaker electromagnetic fields and modulated RF and microwave fields have biological effects. Then it goes on to say that the World Health Organization has classified radio frequency electromagnetic field as a class 2B carcinogen, which is in the same category as lead, DDT, and styrene. So that's quite a difference between no possible biological effect and being a carcinogen. What's going on? Let's explore the science a little bit more. In 1971, the Naval Medical Research Institute published a very large document reviewing 2,300 publications. And in that document, it reports numerous different health effects. Just a couple listed here. The central nervous system is involved, psychological changes, behavioral changes, sleep disorders, gastrointestinal disorders, many others. The scientists have known for 50 years that non-thermal, non-ionizing radiation has biological effects. And as the mechanism of injury is not through creating some unstable ion or by heating the tissue. It's been shown that non-thermal, non-ionizing radiation causes stress to the body, oxidative stress. And it's through this mechanism of voltage-gated calcium channels disrupting the electrical conduction of your body. we're entirely electrical beings. We know that from EEG of the brain, EKG of the heart, the whole body is electrical. So disrupting its communication system causes a lot of oxidative stress. Now you can't feel it, or most people can't feel that, and I'll get to that in a minute. But most people can't feel it any more than you can feel 100 X-rays. But the accumulation is there, the radiation accumulation. And it takes time to develop symptoms because the clinical effects are slow and insidious. Like any chronic stress can cause a myriad of different illnesses depending on which organ system is affected. But just looking at the brain alone, chronic stress, what can it do? Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, OCD, ADHD, autism, migraine, stroke, traumas, cancer. That's just the neurologic system. Chronic stress over time causes a significant problem. But most people are going to be able to appear to tolerate a certain dose of something. Some will be able to tolerate a higher dose of that, whereas others are going to be much more sensitive, like a canary in the coal mine, able to detect a danger first. So if you're one of those individuals capable of detecting a danger first, particularly common symptoms are going to include trouble concentrating, headaches, pain, rashes, fatigue, behavioral change. Those mild symptoms, if you will, to more significant, severe problems like anxiety, depression, hypertension, severe chest pain, cardiac arrhythmia, migraine, and memory loss. So acute reactions in some individuals, but most of the population, this stress accumulates over time. I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Warren Ray, a prominent physician and scientist who studied this field. He was a pioneer in this field, and it was his opinion that sensitivity to electromagnetic radiation is the emerging health problem of the 21st century. It's imperative health practitioners, government, schools, and parents learn more about it. But is it really all that risky? Well, what industry studies risk? The insurance industry. Nobody knows risk better than the insurance industry. So let's take a look at an insurance plan for architects and engineers. Deep in the details of that plan is a long list of exclusions for high risks that they're not going to cover, like earthquakes and floods. Well, sandwiched right between earthquakes and floods is electromagnetic field. There's something the insurance companies know. Well, what about since 1971? Has there been any other publication? There have been many thousands. I could spend weeks talking about all of the publications. I'm only going to have time to touch the surface. Here's one document summarizing and categorizing all the health effects from Wi-Fi radiation alone. And there's way too many to go over, but just take a look. We can see effects on the brain and neurons, fertility and reproduction, hormones, effect on sleep, a slew of different health effects from 2.45 gigahertz, our Wi-Fi routers and Wi-Fi devices. 24/7 Wi-Fi routers emitting pulse modulated microwave radiation. Listen to this testimony from Dr. Sharon Goldberg, testifying to the harms of non-ionizing radiation at a Michigan hearing. Is the volume all the way up?
And you may not know this. I was shocked to find this out. But the way you create a model of diabetes in rats in the lab is by exposing them to 2.4 gigahertz. And this is not for long-term exposure.
2.4 gigahertz. That's also what a microwave oven operates at. And I asked, who among us would allow our kids to press their noses against that glass and wait the 2 minutes for that popcorn to finish? Most people wouldn't let our kids do that. And the reason we don't let them do that is because of this. This is an RF meter, and we're going to measure the amount of radiation leaking through that glass door when the microwave oven is on. Now, before we turn it on, you can see that the background, there's no lights, no sound coming from the meters because the background radiation is very, very low. As soon as that microwave oven is on, you can see that the meter registers the radiation. All the way to the back of the kitchen. It's higher at the glass, but that radiation emits quite a distance through that glass door. This is that same RF meter measuring the radiation coming off some wireless devices. There's an iPad and a Chromebook. And the child is going to be playing some games, and she's going to turn airplane mode on and disable all the antennas. You can see that the radiation just drops away. You're turning it all off. The Chromebook, you can see what it emits in its standard wireless function. And then with internet connectivity via a wired Ethernet cable, you can see the radiation goes away. We'll start with the iPad here. We turn it. Just playing with it. Constant pulses. Put it in airplane mode, disable the other antenna. Go on. Chromebook. This is why we need to measure radiation. You can't see it, smell it, hear it, taste it, and many people don't feel it acutely, but a lot do. That same Chromebook, connected via an adapter with an Ethernet cable, still functions, no radiation. Now, there is a big difference, though, between the microwave radiation coming out of a microwave oven and that from our telecommunications devices. Microwave oven has a smooth, continuous wave that is much less biologically damaging. Telecommunications devices are pulsed. And it is this pulse nature that exacerbates the clinical problem. And I just want to point that out in this slide here. This is a series of lights. And imagine being surrounded by these in all directions. That's a little bit irritating. You're trying to get something done. Well, let's modulate them a little bit. Pulses. See if that changes the impact. And now let's just focus on some algebra. With all of these pulsing flashes of light all around you. Most people find this a whole lot more irritating. And some might be able to focus through that and get the work done, but some people can drive them bonkers. And for others, it could induce seizures. But that's just visible light. That's not in the ionizing radiation spectrum that can cause biological damage. We're told that all of this in the non-ionizing range, visible light on down, has no biological effect unless there's so much of it, it starts heating you up. Well, we know that's not true from the last little demo, but secondly, the FDA has approved numerous devices that help with pain, such as tendinitis and heal bone fractures faster with pulsed electromagnetic waves. We know it has a biological effect in using it in certain ways, and probably it's actually beneficial to the body. You work with the body, the electrical system, and in others, it's quite damaging. Sadly, our telecommunication devices is not in the beneficial end. So, of course, non-ionizing radiation has biological effects. Here's the paper showing exposure to pulse modulated RF affects blood flow in the brain. This was a very large government study. It took 14 years to complete, $30 million, and it was designed to test the basis for the federal safety limit. Looking at cell phone radiation, they found clear evidence of heart damage, DNA damage, and cancer. Another paper reviewing electromagnetic fields producing widespread neuropsychiatric effects, including depression. When I said earlier, we could spend weeks talking about the science, I'm not kidding. There are over 10,000 publications showing harm from non-thermal, non-ionizing radiation. Scientists have known this for a long time. But how can this be? The FCC regulates the telecommunication industry. And they claim all of this radiation is within their safety limits. Well, let's just before we get into how and why that is, look at how USA Australia and Canada have set their safety limit compared to other countries. Austria, Liechtenstein, Bulgaria, Luxembourg, Belgium, Ukraine, Switzerland, China, Lithuania, Russia, Poland, Italy, Paris, that's France. Much lower safety limit. So what was that about? Well, a few things. They only considered the thermal injury and only tested for heat. They ignored all non-thermal effects of non-ionizing radiation. And how do they do this? They average energy over time, over a 30-minute period. So if you take an average of all these intense pulses over 30 minutes, you come to the conclusion, well, this is very low radiation. This is okay. This doesn't heat us. Well, that's not so smart. This is the same thing as shining a bright laser light in your eye for 5 seconds every 5 minutes over 30 minutes. Averaging that light over time and saying, well, it's very dim. Doesn't hurt your eyes. Totally ignoring the effect of the peak intensity of that. That's how they set these safety limits. Entirely out of touch with the scientific evidence. And the FCC was sued over this. I think that was in 2020. And just last year, the judge ruled, and it was a victory for us for safety. There is no basis for safety. Now, this is not the first time that technology or products have been pushed on the public, initially claiming safety and benefits for a long time. Injuries, decades of injuries occur. Scientists and doctors are yelling and screaming before policy actually changes. This is one of them, DDT. Good for me. The tobacco industry was very effective at pushing products on the public long after scientists and doctors knew the harm. More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Well, doctors do it, it must be good for you. Thalidomide, a safe sedation and sounder sleep. Asbestos, it's safer with asbestos. Now, I submit to you that 24/7 exposure from all of this wireless radiation, the cell phones, the iPads, the laptops, the routers, the Bluetooth, the meters, the towers, the new small cell towers going everywhere, have consequences. And in my opinion, it's severe consequences. Most people, it will take time for that stress to accumulate, but some people get a myriad of more acute symptoms. Now, this has been the response to government, authorities, and other administrators. And I propose that our schools do a lot better. Now, before I introduce to you Cece Doucette, I wanted to share my personal story and how I got involved in all this. It was November 30, 2015, and I got a sudden headache. And it just abruptly started today. And this was followed by total insomnia. The headache continued. I couldn't sleep. This continued and continued. Then I became uncharacteristically snappy, very agitated. I became depressed. I got very achy, a lot of neck pain, back pain, abdominal pain, and I developed a cardiac arrhythmia. I felt I was having more skip beats than beating beats. And I partially lost my memory. It got to the point I was having trouble functioning, doing normal tasks. Remembering a dream meant go or stop at a traffic light. The only thing of significance today all this started was the electric company upgraded my electric meter to the new version of the smart meter. And the symptoms, they continued for months and months. But fortunately, we had this other electrical problem at the house the utility needed to address. And then the problem, in the process, they pulled that smart meter off my house. My cardiac arrhythmia was already better by the end of the week. My mood was returning. my energy was returning. The neck pain, back pain, abdominal pain starting to lighten up, and my memory was coming back. It's not back yet, but it definitely made very big improvements. Then, a few months later, my headache is back again. I can't sleep again. Cardiac arrhythmia again. Mood declines again. Depressed again. Then I find the utility of that smart meter back in my house again. I was very lucky they pulled it off. Again, the symptoms resolved again. So the symptoms started as soon as that meter was on the house on 2 separate occasions. And the symptoms resolved when the meter was pulled from the house on 2 separate occasions. Now that exposure heightened my intolerance to electromagnetic fields, which is what flipped my health and my life upside down. Constantly having to manage these overreactive symptoms from this electrical soup in which we're all swimming. And I'll share a reason why I publicized it. I have 3 different friends that credited me for saving their lives, literally saving their lives. One had already planned for suicide. Most of what I did for them was share my story and my experience, same thing I'm doing here, and enable their escape from a noxious environment. And the changes made a very big difference. They did the same, they cleaned up their living environment electrically, and their symptoms also dramatically improved. 2 of those 3 friends initially had absolutely no idea that wireless devices and other electronics had anything to do with their serious health decline. In this plight, I have an ongoing legal battle, and in the process, I met many people in the exact same situation. Many thousands of people already know that some type of non-ionizing radiation causes or contributes to their health condition, often debilitating health condition. But many have not yet even made this connection. So I'd like to introduce you now to Cece Doucette from Massachusetts for Safe Technology, who will do the second half of this lecture.
Dr. McKnight, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experience. I was testifying before the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities, and I measured the number of pulsations that came off of the utility smart meter on my own home. And it was 17,000 times a day that was pulsating. And if we didn't know any better and had somebody on the other side of that wall, they too might have become very ill. So I would like to share a set of slides. Justin, can you give me a nod if you can see my slides?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, great. Thank you. So like many people, I had no idea there was anything to even question about wireless technology. And I used to run our local education foundation at the time that the industry was pushing that 21st century classroom into our schools. And I ran campaign after campaign to get wireless infrastructure, iPads, Chromebooks, smart boards, minis, Apple TV, all what we thought was this great new technology. Then one night at book group, my girlfriend Wendy, who's an electrical engineer, tipped us off that there could be something up biologically. So I was wanting to know if there was any science to back that up. And as Dr. McKnight found, there are literally thousands of studies all over the world showing this is very biologically harmful. So it was not an easy conversation to have with my schools because they had spent money on this. The state level authorities were telling them, because the industry got in at the curriculum level, at the state level, that they have to embed technology into the curriculum. So it wasn't an easy one to have, but ultimately we became the first public school district in the nation 8 years ago to even have this sign hanging in our classrooms. Let's start by turning off every device when we're not using it. Turn the wireless on only when needed. And other schools have put a switch on the wall where you can just turn on the Wi-Fi for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 15 minutes, and then it automatically shuts itself off. So we're limiting the amount of radiation. And then always place the mobile device on a solid surface. As we'll show you in a minute, the legal fine print tells us not to keep these on our bodies. So I went to Senator Karen Spilka, whom I had worked alongside in the Education Foundation, and I showed her the science and I showed her the sign in our schools. And I measured her cell phone and her district director's laptop, and both devices went off the charts. So that's how we got started with legislation in Massachusetts, but we haven't done anything meaningful. We've come out of committee a couple times, but we'll share with you in a moment what we've done in New Hampshire that's really groundbreaking. And on this journey, somebody found my work and asked if I would volunteer my tech writing skills. This MTPW after my name just means that I had the privilege of earning a master's of technical and professional writing. So I loaned my skills over to a nonprofit in Europe that was building little courses that everybody could take in about a half an hour to be trained. And we have a schools and families course that we're moving to a new platform right now that will be back online shortly. So we have off-the-shelf training to train your entire school district on this. And then for the first couple of years, there wasn't anybody I could speak to about my findings. And then in 2016, a panel of world-leading experts came to our state house, and I was invited to go listen to what they had to say. And I was just so comforted to be in a room full of people talking about this issue. And so I and others in our state have formed Massachusetts for Safe Technology. We've got a lot of the science teed up right there. So you can go and look and see what we're doing at the public policy level, what the scientists are telling us. And we'll give you guys our slides. We'll put them up in the, I think it's a Google Docs database that we have access to after today. We'll make sure you guys can get to our slides. And I love to share this link with you because somebody down at the National Institutes of Health found my work and asked if I would co-chair the technology panel for the Health in Buildings Roundtable Conference. So this was the first time at the National Institutes of Health that we had architects, city planners, building biologists, we had doctors, we had hospitals, all these urban planners, and we all got together, and for the first time we got to teach them about wireless radiation. And I was so humbled that on my panel came Frank Clegg, who's the retired president of Microsoft Canada. And after he retired, he really figured out what's going on with wireless. We brought Dr. Martin Paul, who's one of the world's leading scientists on this health effect. And we brought Theodora Scarato of the Environmental Health Trust, which is arguably the largest database in the world with this information in it. And then Peter Sullivan is a philanthropist, and he got really sick. He had been a fighter pilot, kind of like Top Gun. And his health started crashing because he was up there with the gamma rays, with all the radiation on the planes. And then when his two little boys came into the preschool years, both of his sons wound up on the autism spectrum. And I had listened to one of Peter's lectures, and he said that his kids are no longer on the autism spectrum. And that caught my ear because I didn't even know that was a possibility. But it turns out if there are de novo mutations, meaning it didn't come through mom's bloodline, it didn't come through dad's, it came somewhere in the environment. You know, Peter did with his sons what most parents will do. They'll clean out the diet and get good organic food. They might do the heavy metal detox. And today he advises parents do the digital detox ASAP. Time and again, we hear when we remove or reduce these electromagnetic fields that we see huge gains in functionality. So these are good 10-minute short videos for you to share with others as you open this conversation. Now, when I fell down the rabbit hole back in 2013, one of our major gaps is that so many people were sick and getting misdiagnosed. Today, we have an EMF medical conference that we had to pivot in the pandemic and put online, but it is now fully accredited for 24.5 continuing medical education credits and continuing education credits for nurses. So doctors, nurses, first responders, firefighters, anybody who's a licensed healthcare practitioner, and anybody else who just wants to go learn can take this conference online at a ridiculously low price. The public can attend for $39, and for licensed professionals, it's under $100, and you can do it on your own time until July, and then it's no longer available. So although it's really mind-boggling to find out that wireless is harmful, we have solutions for everything. So many have been working on this, and we know how to get to safe technology. But I want to share with you what caused my schools to take action. Anybody who's with us today that has an iPhone, I invite you to take the iPhone out right now and go into settings. And I want to walk you through the legal fine print. If you don't have an iPhone, perhaps you can look on with a neighbor, or you can always come back later and go to this website called See the Fine Print, where they show you in the fine print like Apple iPads, seizures, blackouts, eye strain. Okay, so if you're in your iPhone, hit settings, a little ways down, hit general. And on an old phone, you'd have to hit about, but most have upgraded. So from general, go all the way down to legal and regulatory. And you can remember the acronym GAL, that this GAL came into your professional development day and showed you this. Once you're in legal and regulatory, about 4 down, you'll see RF exposure, radio frequency radiation exposure, that they politely call energy in this fine print disclaimer. And when we read the first few paragraphs, there are a couple of important things. One, this device was tested at a distance from the body. So if you put it in your shirt pocket or your bra or your waistband or your back pocket or your front pocket or up to your head, you are exceeding the FCC public radiation exposure limits. And as Dr. McKnight taught us, they were never biologically safety tested. So the FCC allows like this much radiation, and the science is showing us the harm is at hundreds of thousands of times below that. So another paragraph there suggests that you use a hands-free option. So basically, if this thing is radiating, you should not be touching it, or it should not be touching any part of your body. The reason being is that they give it to us with multiple antennas radiating: cellular, data, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, locator, hotspot. And for anybody who didn't know any better and upgraded to a 5G phone, please don't do it if you haven't. You have additional antennas in there. So you should have a choice. If I don't need all those antennas, certainly let's turn them off and only turn on the one that we need for as short a time as possible. I'm going to take a quick break out of the screen sharing. This morning, one of your colleagues asked about the earbuds, and that is putting a microwave transmitter on both sides of your brain and then radiating down somewhere along your body or near you, wherever your radiating device is. There are options for everything. This is what you do instead of earbuds. You get a hollow tube headset. We know that metal amplifies radiation, so you don't want to plug a traditional headset into a radiating device because it's just going to go trucking right up to your brain on the wire. What you can do is get the air tube or the hollow tube. It's got, good acoustics. These little ferrite beads break the radiation, and then the sound carries all the way up into your head with no metal. Don't get any earbuds with metal like magnets to hang around your neck. That'll just draw more radiation to your brain. So when I was learning this, I was thinking, how can I get my head around this thing that's so invisible but so toxic? And I ultimately learned that there are radio frequency detection meters that one can purchase. And Lexi had demonstrated her acoustimeter. In my home, knowing what I know, I just simply hardwired everything. And hardwiring is not rocket science. You just run Ethernet cables and adapters to all your electronics and then turn off the antennas. And you get a screaming fast signal. It's far more reliable. Your data and your privacy are far better protected than sending your information through the air. Hardwired beats wireless hands down on everything but convenience. And that's something that we can just get a shift in our mindset to get used to again. So in my home, we're in the green. And in the scientific literature, they want us to be at 10 or less. And the unit of measurement is something called a microwatt per square meter. So in about 3 feet of square air, how much radiation is there? Right now in my home, because I've chosen safety over convenience, I'm at 4. We want to be under 10, so I'm looking pretty good. But I want to take my cell phone out of airplane mode, which is I keep it there all the time unless I need to do something. And then we see what happens as each one of these antennas comes online and starts going, here I am, where are you? Here I am, where are you? Here I am, where are you? And pulsing these spiked erratic pulses of microwave radiation to make or maintain a handshake with the nearest cell tower or router. And again, the message is not no technology, it's safe technology. So I'm going back into airplane mode, and we see this will drop back into the green because now my house is safe again. But I want to show you what just happened. We went from 4 to 600, I know you can't really see it, 672,000 microwatts per square meter, and we want to be under 10 in our homes. So that is something that we can all think about to measure these exposures. And I helped my public library become the first in the country to have one of these on loan in their Internet of Library Things, or their Library of Things. So others can do that. This one that I just showed you is the one that was recommended at the medical conference. It's right on par with the one that Dr. McKnight has, that I'm sure she would be happy to walk around your classroom with. But literally, it's not rocket science to fix this, you guys. On the back of your router, you've got Ethernet ports. All you need to do is run a big long Ethernet cable from there to wherever you use your technology. And most of us have multiple devices today. This is something called an Ethernet switch, which you can think of as like an extension cord for electronics. I know in a classroom, you could get one with, I don't know, 30 ports or something in it. And then you just get an Ethernet cable and plug it in for each device. You might need to get a little adapter. And again, these are not going to break the bank for most people. And then simply plug it into your device. So hardwire it. You can do the same thing for your tablets, for your laptops, for your PCs. And then the second step is to just go in and turn off all the antennas and everything that was transmitting. And then you have to measure. My printer wound up having 3 of these antennas in it, and I didn't know that because it only glowed on the faceplate when one of those antennas was turned on, but there were 2 others in there. And all I had to do was measure and then go online and look at the manual and go into settings and turn it all off. So with the industry pushing in now their 5G and the Internet of Things, they want to put these antennas in everything you buy so they can harvest your data and sell it as a revenue stream. So today's message is not no technology, it's safe technology, and we know how to get there. Martin Luther King Jr. taught us that when important changes happen in society, it comes through 3 channels. 1, the public learns and gets educated and decides to make some changes at the grassroots level. And then, as we saw, the courts are starting to get involved in this, and public policy. So as Dr. McKnight showed us, there's been a major victory, but they just sent it back to the Fox Watch and the Hen House at the FCC. They haven't actually fixed the problem yet. So we can't wait for somebody else to fix this for us. We can take charge of what we have direct control over. There was a major federal lawsuit at a school, a very prestigious international boarding school here in Massachusetts. And for the first time, the courts recognize that, yes, there are biological effects. And then out at Los Angeles Unified School District, when the Common Core came in and the industry gave everybody a wireless device and everybody fired them all up at once to do their Common Core testing, the building just got so electropolluted that many of the teachers became sick. And this one had to sue because the school offered her accommodations and then reneged. She needed a clean space to teach her students, and they reneged, so she had to sue, and now she's out on permanent disability. So there are many lawsuits happening, so this is good. Not that I ever thought a lawsuit was a good thing, but in this case, this is just how the system works. And then for policy, New Hampshire is leading the nation. We already got a law passed to address these very pointed questions about the insurance industry, about the fine print, about why the FCC is not doing its job, and why nobody's looking at the cumulative effect, because this radiation goes out like a pebble in a pond. So if you have a classroom of 20 or 30 students, all of them streaming, you are in a very toxic environment. So New Hampshire is the first government in the country to investigate, and this report is a gift to us all. The first 17 pages outline who the experts were that they called in, what they found, and what they recommend. They document the corruption with the wireless industry and our federal agencies, and they make 15 recommendations to transition from where we are to warn everybody, teach everybody, and transition to hardwired fiber optics to and through the premises. And one of those recommendations is to transition to hardwiring in our schools. So in January, they're planning to introduce right to know legislation and guidelines for our municipalities, because the industry comes in and says, hey, it's the law. You have to let us put this cell tower in your front yard. Well, that's not at all what the law says. Our town should all be invoking zoning code that protects our neighborhoods and our schools. So lots we can do once we know. And the industry comes in and says, oh, here's an application and your neighborhood's the only one complaining about it. It's the NIMBYs, they don't want it in their backyard. But that's simply not true. Americans for Responsible Technology already lists over 150 groups all over the country that are working so hard on this, because they recognize there is no cavalry coming. It's up to you and I to learn, go scream into a pillow, and then come back and figure out what we can do to fix this. And you're fortunate that there are already 2 groups who have been working really hard in Pennsylvania. So you can reach out to them directly. And then for school resources, check this out. The New York Times did a 3-part expose on what Silicon Valley execs are doing. They're sending their children to schools with no technology, not wireless, not hardwired. No technology, because they know that a child's brain best develops through trusted teachers, parents, their peers, and the natural environment. They've even gone so far as to have their nannies sign contracts that there will be no screens around their children. So every time they zig, we zag, and our friends at Grassroots Environmental Education, they have the Americans for Responsible Technology project. And then they also just introduced Tech Safe Schools. So you can go out to Tech Safe Schools and see all this great information in a really nicely packaged way and give you resources to start with. We even have teachers unions who have already begun working on this. So we have lots of resources for you at every turn. And then here in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Breast Cancer Coalition has already built curriculum so you guys can teach this: cell phones, wireless, and your health. We have teacher guides, student guides, and fact sheets at every level of public school learning. And then the Environmental Health Trust also has additional classroom resources. They've got printable flyers, infographics that you can use in social media. And as I mentioned, we already know how to train our medical professionals, and there's a ton of resources for engineers, physicists, technologists, architects, so much good information. But there are professionals. There's a whole profession called building biologists who are certified to come in and help you get done if you're not a do-it-yourselfer. This film, Generation Zapped, is now available on Amazon Prime. It's a great way to sit down with your loved ones, your neighbors, the parents of the kids your kids hang out with, and just start learning. Who knew? PBS has already done 2 episodes on this. And here's a whole toolkit to get you started in your community, because they are literally putting these small cells up at the curb outside our homes, and you'll never get away from the radiation. So let's keep learning together. We do a little bit longer presentation a couple times a month, free public education. The next one is this Friday at noon. If you're in the middle of a work day, you can just register and we'll send you the video. So please join us. But for today, think about how you might reduce your exposures. Just start noticing what is radiating. Start with baby steps. Create distance from anything that's radiating. Choose airplane mode as often as you can. Use Ethernet cables and adapters as a permanent solution. And create a sleep sanctuary.
Session 4, the vendor fair and the raffle ticket table close at 2 p.m. Session 5 will begin at 1 o'clock.
So my parting words are be gentle with yourself. You didn't know about this. I didn't know about it. there's no finger pointing that's ever going to help. Let's just start working towards solutions. And you guys are really lucky that you have an IT director who has some experience with this. So maybe your school district can be a big pioneer in your area. So thank you for joining us. You can find me at Massachusetts for Safe Technology. Reach out with even the silliest of questions because we are here to help.